Okay, so it's just 5 minutes, but I still want to keep you alert. So at one point during the presentation, I'm going to throw the frisbee at a random place in the audience. So be alert. Okay, so in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to give you just a taste of mobx. We've used this in our apps, large-scale apps that we build, and we think it's really awesome. So mobx is a solution for state management. A common practice today is to have stateless components that all interact with the same central state. This way, the components can share the same data, but still be decoupled from each other and have a single source of truth. Mobx is very performant. It allows you to cache calculations of data from the state. It allows you to react to changes on the state. And it gives you tools to track and debug what's going on underneath the hood. But Nir mentioned Redux. So Redux does all of this. So why switch from Redux to something else? Who uses Redux? So if you use Redux, you probably know there are a lot of pain points. If you don't know what Redux is, I'll explain in a bit, because I'm going to say a lot of bad things about it. I want you to know how it works before. So, I think you're not awake. Woo! Congratulations. So Redux has a single state which is immutable. It never changes. If you want to change the state, you dispatch an action from the component, reducer catches the action, and gives you a new state. And all the components that are registered to the state will receive this change. This is a nice concept, but it introduces a lot of boilerplate code. And the code is very unreadable. If you try to understand what the code does, it's really hard. On the contrary, so we don't like it. On the contrary, this code is very simple to read because it's using plain objects. This is one of the biggest advantages of mobx. It uses plain objects and classes. Mobx gives us decorators. So the most important decorator is the observable decorator. We put it on a property, and then mobx will know every time we access the property. So every time we get a value or set a value on this property, mobx will know about it, and it allows us to react to changes to every property, basically. It's like Object.observe that doesn't exist. Who likes async operations in Redux? Nobody. You know why? It's not fun. Even the simplest task, like if you need to send something to the server, and if the response is successful, you need to close a modal window. This is really hard to do in Redux. It requires running implicit code in middlewares, and the async flow is really complicated to track. When you use it in mobx, you just use simple promises, and you can see the entire async flow in one block of code. So it's very simple. And now comes the coolest part about mobx. It has a concept called computed values. So let's say you have a list of items and a current filter, and you want to calculate the list of filtered items. But you don't want to recalculate it on every change detection cycle. You want to cache the value and recalculate only when you should. This is what mobx does automatically. So the first time we call the computed value, mobx will run the function, but it will also notice which observables we've used inside the function. Because it has the observable decorator, it knows when we access these properties. And then the next time, it will return the cached value. Now, every time somebody sets a value into these observables, mobx knows about it, and it recalculates the computed value only when it should, which makes our app much more performant. Now, Redux has a similar solution, but it involves a third-party library called reselect, and you have to explicitly say what are your dependencies. Mobx automatically builds the dependency tree for us. We don't have to say it explicitly. So Redux is not as simple as the initial diagram that we saw. We also have middlewares and selectors, and when you try to run through the code of Redux, the flow is very distributed. You find yourself jumping between files to understand what's going on. And people say, yeah, but Redux has time traveling, and it's really easy to debug. Yeah, but if you don't use Redux, it's not so hard to debug. So you don't need all these fancy tools. Nod if you agree. And go like this. Okay. So we are here because of Angular, right? So Mobix is agnostic framework. It has an official connector to Angular. You can find it. It's called mobx-angular. And it works in a very simple way. First of all, you inject your store, which is just a normal class, a service, to your component. And let's say you have a template. So inside the template, you can use the service just like a normal object. You can use properties. You can call methods, which are actions, but they're just functions. And the only thing you need to do is to add the mobx autorun directive. Mobx autorun works pretty much like a computed value. First, it renders the template, but it also notices which observables or computed values you've used inside the template. For example, here we're using the filtered items and the completed, and et cetera, et cetera. And now, every time one of these observables or computed values change, Mobix will trigger change detection on the component. If you use it together with the on-push change detection strategy, if you know what it is in Angular, you can achieve really high performance in your components. And everything happens automatically, which is awesome. So, am I telling you never to use Redux? No, absolutely not. Redux shines in very specific use cases. And in these use cases, it will be really hard to build without Redux. For example, if you need to do undo, redo, or a lot of serialization and deserialization, then you should definitely use Redux. But for most web apps that we've built, I think our team would be or has been much more productive when we used Mobix. Specifically because of the reasons I mentioned. It uses plain objects, the flow is very simple, and it's much more automatic than Redux. And it doesn't use immutable data. So I could sum it up by saying that Mobix is a complex library. If you had to build Mobix, it would be complicated. But your code base that uses Mobix is simple. And Redux is a very simple library, but your code base is very complex. So this was just a taste. Mobix has a lot more to offer. I recommend that you go inside the GitHub repository of Mobix and explore. And you can always ask me questions. I'll be glad to answer. I don't charge that much. Thank you. Give me back my Frisbee. No, I'm kidding. You can keep it.